In this video, I'll be installing the Quick Panel for AccuSQL 2015. The Quick Panel is typically used by advisors, counselors, or tutors, and it allows centralized access to all of the activities that those users would use on a typical basis. So with AccuSQL, you'd have to go to various other screens to accomplish the same thing that you can do in Quick Panel all in one screen. Also, the Quick Panel is a standalone installer, so you need not install AccuSQL on the machine that's running Quick Panel. So it may be a better choice for your advisors or counselors or tutors, for that matter, to run the Quick Panel as a standalone application versus full-blown AccuSQL. Okay, so anyway, in my installer, I have an installer launcher here, but I can go directly to the installer for Quick Panel right here, and I'll run the setup.exe for that. And that will start the installer. Okay, I'll click Next, Next again, read and agree to the license agreement. I can add my name and organization if I'd like. And I would recommend the default path, which is program files or program files x86, depending if it's 32-bit or 64-bit. This happens to be 64-bit. And then Quick Panel SQL 15. Click Next, and I also recommend installing for anyone, and that will start the launcher. Okay, now I'll click Finish, and if I was showing my desktop icons, you would have a desktop shortcut to Quick Panel, but I can go to the folder where it's installed. In this case, Program Files x86, and it's under Quick Panel SQL 15, and the exe to launch the program is called Quick Panel SQL. I'm going to go ahead and open that, and you may notice the first time it opens, it's going to copy some files out. What it's doing is creating some DB param files we need to store the path to the database, as well as copying a tutoring sample database out to its own public folder. So it's pointing now to a tutor sample database from its own drive. Okay, and I can log in and look at it if I'd like with a tutor ID. One sample tutor ID you can use is 000444444. Password's the same thing, 000444444. Press Enter, and now I'm logged into the Quick Panel. Okay, but ultimately what we're going to need to do is point the Quick Panel to the same database that we're using, the production database typically that AccuSQL is using. Okay, and that's an easy process. I'm going to go ahead and close the Quick Panel and go back to my folder. I don't want to back up my database. Okay, and in my folder where Quick Panel's installed here, I've got one exe called set data path. So I can set my database connection parameters directly using that exe. And this is a SQL Server database. And I'm going to put in my information real quick. Click my database drop-down. It may take a few seconds to populate. Okay, and there's the database I'm using. Test my connection. Now, before I continue, I want to talk briefly about application shared path. There are various reasons, many reasons why that is a good idea to use an application shared path. That's not the database path. That's a folder that's shared amongst the various computers that are running AccuSQL in order to do things like work with local labs, use the Quick Panel with the intake system, shared reports, shared software updates, etc. So it's good practice for you to have an application shared path. Just put a share out on a folder somewhere. You can point to it with a UNC path, a // path, or a map drive letter, and you need to have read-write access for all of the users that are going to be sharing that folder. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to go look briefly at my AccuSQL here and find out what my shared folder is and set my Quick Panel to that same shared folder. Okay, so I'll log in as admin, go look at my database location, and I can see I have a map drive letter here called Z AccuSQL share. So I'm just going to copy that guy. And I can exit AccuSQL, doesn't really matter. And now I'm going to set my shared path for my quick panel to the same thing as AccuSQL, which would be my production data. Okay, I'm done. Now, I'll show you one reason why that's important is I'm going to log into AccuSQL. Okay, now I'm going to sign a student in, and I've got my intake system on here. Okay, so here comes Diego in this case, signing in for academic counseling with, let's say, Morgan Freeman. Okay, so now I'm in line and I'm waiting to be seen. Now I'm going to exit AccuSQL and go back to my quick panel and log in as Morgan Freeman. And when I do so, well, I have two Diegos waiting, so I'll remove one of my Diegos. But as you can see, I can see students waiting for me. Now, if I'd signed somebody in with Cindy Bright, I could see all students waiting, and I can try that real quick. So I'll sign in another student. It looks like I've got a survey. That's fine. Okay, and let's say somebody's coming in for college algebra with Cindy. Okay, so now another student's in line. Back to the quick panel, and I see Diego is waiting for me, Morgan. That's who I'm signed in as to the quick panel. I click all waiting, and now I see Fernando is waiting for Cindy, a different tutor. Okay. So the reason I'm showing you all this is dependent, this students in line list that we're looking at in the intake system, that's what this is. In Quick Panel, we're calling it students in line, but that's dependent on using that same shared folder. So if in doubt, set the shared folder up, is all I'm saying. Okay, so now let's talk briefly about the Quick Panel here. I can sign this student in if I'd like, and we have a whole video on using Quick Panel. But I'm just going to show you one thing here, is do you see all of the buttons that are lit up when I double click on Diego in this case, okay? What options you have available on the front end of the quick panel here are dependent on the tutors access group in AccuSQL, and I'll show you that briefly. Also, the back end screens, so what I've done here, let me show you again, is I'm clicking admin, and I can actually get to the back end of AccuSQL, the setup here, as a tutor. Okay, so I'm logged in as that tutor, and I can have access to some various options in AccuSQL. Okay, now let's talk about what those options are that I can make available to tutors or advisors or counselors or whoever is using the quick panel. Okay, so back as an administrator real quick. Okay, and in system access groups, I have a tutors access group. Now this is a reserved word, so just leave it alone. Even if you're an advisor or a counselor, it will still be under the tutors group here. Okay, but when I edit that group, then I can determine what anybody that logs in to Quick Panel or AccuSQL in a tutor, advisor, counselor capacity can get to on the back end of the software. Now I say the back end, but it also encompasses the front end of the Quick Panel, like the buttons that say create appointment, etc. Okay, so here's where you set up what the people can get to. Okay, and again, if, for example, I went to my access group and turned off everything appointment related, for example. Okay, so I've turned off all my appointment stuff. I save that. Now let's go log back in as into the quick panel, excuse me. And we'll log in as Cindy Bright this time. just to be different. Okay, so now I see Cindy, Fernando's waiting, and Diego's already signed in. Okay, but what I want to show you here, let's go ahead and sign in Fernando, is now I'm double-clicking, and then I go to Admin and Appointments, and as you can see, I have no options available to me for appointment scheduling. Okay, so that's the back end of the software. Okay, now here I can do a lot of different things such as running reports, editing logs. Again, I can turn this on or off if I'd like to, just like I did the other. But you see what I don't have is create appointment, right? So I can't create an appointment because I've disabled that option. Okay, so that's how you decide what your advisors, counselors, tutors, etc. can get to. Now, I guess one thing I failed to mention is who are tutors, advisors, and counselors that I keep talking about. So one more time back into AccuSQL here. And what I mean is anyone that is in this tutors table, anyone that's listed here, Cindy, Morgan, and everyone else, they're all going to have that exact same access that I've set in my tutors access group. Okay? So what you would do for QuickPanel from this point forward, you would install QuickPanel on the various advisor, tutor, counselor stations. Again, you don't have to have AccuSQL installed. You can just install the QuickPanel. As you can see, I've got all the power I need with QuickPanel. I don't really need to have AccuSQL running. So you have choices. You can install either or you can put both. If it's a director station or someone you want to have full power to every feature in AccuSQL and the QuickPanel, you can install them both, and you can see I'm running them simultaneously. So I can actually open the QuickPanel at the same time that I have AccuSQL open. Okay? And that's all there is to it. Okay, thank you.